My name is Paul, as the man just said, and today I'm going to be talking to you, I hope, about a subject that is interesting, and that's fear, being afraid. Now, my subject today is a dark and stormy night. Yeah, I said I wrote that, but actually I did not write that. That was written by a man a long time ago, maybe about 200 years ago. His name, Edward Bulwer Lytton. Now, I don't think that's as, say, worthy as J.K. Rowling, but it certainly in his day, he was very much like J.K. Rowling. He was a very well-known author. He was extremely powerful. He was a politician, and he was someone who was quoted. In fact, he was the one who coined the term the almighty dollar. Now, whether or not you've heard this phrase, and it is a cliche, trust me, it's been around a long, long time. It was a dark and stormy night. But think about it. Is there anything wrong with this particular sentence? Can you imagine? Anyone? Well, it's quite simple. What night is not dark? Is that stupid or what? Who wrote that? Oh, I wrote that. No, my name is Paul, but I'm not that Paul. That was his book. Being afraid of writing, yeah, I wrote something wrong. I wrote something bad. That's why they make erasers, you know? Whiteout. That's why they put delete on your computer. But the fact of the matter is, there are people who are afraid. And in fact, I'll tell you, 70% of people are afraid of writing for a variety of reasons. And I'm going to tell you about that too, and what you can do about it. But let's look at what really fear of writing is all about. People are afraid of a lot of things. I used to be afraid of dogs when I was a child. But today, writing is also part of what I'm afraid of. Now think of it. You're afraid because of something called apprehension. That's, oh my God, I have to turn in this paper tomorrow, and it's already late. You know, that kind of attitude. It's like what our previous speaker was talking about, that 2 a.m. moment. If you're going to think about what you are afraid of, writing may or may not come into that sort of thinking. But there are specific reasons, and there are feelings that you have, beside the fact that you're late. Fear is real. Fear is something that everybody experiences, but they experience it in a variety of ways. You may cry, you may run around the room, you may, feel that you're going to die, but the fact is you don't, and yes, the assignment is still due. You might go down to the 7 and buy a beer, you might chew some gum, you might do anything. Surf the internet. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Anything but right, not right. But there are causes for this feeling, you know? What is it? Well, here, this list is probably number 4, low self-efficacy for writing. That means I don't know how. That's how simple it is. I just don't write very often. It's actually about 15% of our communication skill is writing. Of course, most of it is our mouth, and very little of it is our ears. But think about it. How often do you write? Sure, you write email, you might write a text message, but we're talking about papers, we're talking about long letters. People don't do that stuff anymore. I use the internet. Now, if I'm thinking of that, I'm also going to ask myself, what is it I really want to write? Well, I want to write something that's worth reading, okay? Maybe you're the same. Now, this long, long list, I'll condense it down to a very simple idea. All of us have people that we admire, writers that we admire. And there is something that I want you to notice. Whenever you look at CNN or you look at the news, you're always going to see some guy up there, like me, blah, 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 blah. And he's always going to have a bunch of books behind him. Have you ever noticed that? Well, there's a good reason. That's because, just like Isaac Newton said, we stand on the shoulders of giants. We will read, and then we'll say, oh, I wish I wrote that. Oh, I will write that. Now, hopefully, you're going to cite it. You won't plagiarize. You won't copy. That's a bad idea. Okay, don't do that. But I will tell you that in order to become a good writer, you have to do a lot of reading. Think about it. You're afraid to write. You don't want to. I don't think anybody here is going to leave this talk and go home and say, you know what? I want to write something. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's principally due to the fact that, see that last word, evaluation? You know what that means? That means that someone somewhere is going to sit there and go, this is stupid. Now, I trust that nobody wants that kind of reaction to their writing. So, if I want to be over this idea of being afraid to write, I got to understand why. I want to know really seriously, why does it bother me? Why would I rather do anything except write? Well, here we can see a bunch of really negative stuff. We don't want to be compared to other people. We don't want to follow rules. I have to tell you, when it comes to PowerPoint, I don't like to read a lot. I'll write it down and I'll tell you to read it. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at this list, I know something here definitely resonates. Something definitely you recognize. You recognize the fear. You can smell it. Okay, let's talk specifically about students, since many of you are students in this audience, not just on the internet. The idea of writing probably is not one of your favorite things, and you usually have to do this for your teacher. Your teacher will be the only person who will ever read what you wrote, and you hope that the teacher will be very nice to you. Okay? Now, again, let's look at it from this point of view. The last one, to feel that your writing never turns out the way you wanted it to. I assure you that even for a professional, when you hand in your work, there's always something you forgot. Oh, excuse me, can I change that, please? But it doesn't work that way. Never. Oh, sorry. See, it doesn't work that way. Okay. Why is writing so stressful? Why do I worry about it so much? Why do I think about it all the time? Well, it's quite simple. It's hard. Have you ever thought about that? Why am I afraid to write? Because it's so hard. But what makes it hard? It's because, well, thinking uses a lot of energy. Oh, sorry again. God. Okay. If I really seriously want to be away from my fear, I'm going to tell you, this is how you do it. There are two cures. The first one is just start reading. Read what other people wrote. Start thinking about, again, these words are, well, maybe they're good words. Maybe they're words that I wish I could write myself. Well, why don't you? Just practice. If necessary, copy them down and try to figure out why is it any good. Free writing is journal writing. Free writing is email. Free writing is the social media. Free writing is anything where you're doing keystroke, you're picking up a pencil, you're doing anything so that these words will come out. These words will be expressed. Expression means out, out. A second point, when we consider fear, fear is something that must be grasped, that you have to understand. You cannot run away from. Fear is something, again, that we all feel in a normal way. If you look at these numbers, 24% of students feel it on a regular basis. That's 1 out of 4. Every single time I put down my words on the paper, I'm not happy. Why? The second point, 70% of us feel it sometimes. Now that's a lot. That's like 2 out of 3 people feel like, I just don't like what I write. This is garbage. And they start over and over and over again until the point where they never finish, and then the deadline comes. And then finally, of course, those lucky 6% who, hey, what do you want me to write? You know, when I was preparing for this, I immediately thought of Snoopy. I know you think of Snoopy when you're writing, don't you? But let's put it this way. It was a dark and stormy night is actually a cliche that was written first in 1965 by Snoopy, the great author. Now, Snoopy, if you can imagine him sitting on top of his doghouse with his typewriter, writing this same sentence over and over again. It was a dark and stormy night. He could never, not for 35 years, he could never go beyond that. People would make fun of him. Why don't you write something else? It was a dark and stormy night. And he would say, oh, once upon a time, it was a dark and stormy night. I didn't write that. That's Charles Schulz. But Charles Schulz understood clearly what it is to be a child. Peanuts. He understood clearly what it is to write and write and write. If you really look at this, you'll see for yourself that Snoopy is just like all of us. He wants to write the great American novel. Now, the last words that I'll say about fear and the great American novel were written by Ernest Hemingway. In 1961, he unfortunately committed suicide. He did so for a variety of reasons. Many people say that it was because he could no longer write. Personally, I think it had more to do with the fact that he had a lot of pain in his life. But perhaps the inability to write, the fact that you can't express yourself, what's in your heart, in your mind, would be so tragic that you could not live with yourself. But before he died, he asked that question. What am I afraid of? What stops me from writing? And these were the words he offered. All you have to do is to write a true sentence. So write the truest sentence you know. The night is dark. Thank you very much.